Greetings, YouTube. One of my subscribers asked me a question this morning about what I would suggest as guidelines if someone were going to design their own game. He's working on his own system. And specifically, he would look for some like just mechanical and aesthetic choices and things like that. For example, if you're going to see a book in print, make sure that it doesn't have a font smaller than 12 point, at least for the text. You want the text to be, you want like text for like charts that'd be like a 10 or even an 8 for really small stuff. That's fine, but nothing smaller than a 12 for the actual body of the work. Um, he commented he prefers to have page numbers in the lower corner, outside corner, which is fine. I know that whenever I start reading a new book, I look for them immediately because I often reference page numbers when I'm reading. Um, but broader things like, do you have any ideas about potholes that a person can fall into while creating? There is the "I'm creating the greatest game that's ever existed" pothole that a person can fall into. There is the "I and my group have come up with this awesome game. We've been playtesting it for years, and it's a hothouse flower because they've only playtested it within the group. And they know all the nomenclature, and they know all the abbreviations, and they know every nook and cranny of that system, but they've never handed it to someone who's never seen it before and said, here, look at it." That's a problem. It needs to get play tested outside from people who have never seen your system, who have experience in role playing games, and also handed to people who have never seen a role playing game at all. You need to gauge those opinions from both those groups, and you need to check multiple people. It's like an experiment, folks. You need to get it out there and get the dents banged out before you decide to ship it off. Um, Also, people who do things like say, "Oh, it's an OSR game. It's old school revival. It's so simple." Except instead of putting rules in here, they decide to put the rules in here. So the game is just as complex as this. It just is up to the GM in their head every day to make up the rules as they go, and every table is going to be different. That's not a simple game. A simple game is one that functions the same for every single group that plays it. That they all have a common language and they can all agree that when you say X, everybody means X. And the only way you can do that is if you write the rules down. Yeah, that's what you need to do. Um, and this is the kind of thing that happens all the time in role playing games. There are other things, for example, making sure that the columns in your pages are attractive, making sure that you're not using, for example, a sepia tone background color, which isn't bad, but you're using a light colored text. No, make sure there's a big contrast in your text. That's a real world issue you have to deal with. Make sure those cool borders around your page don't bleed over into your text and make it difficult to read. Don't put lots of text, tiny little text on top of a picture so you can't see, particularly if it's a color picture. You need to make sure you're blocking, you make sure your graphical layout is such that it makes visual sense and it's appealing. And if you want to stick just with black and white art, cool. I'm a big fan of black and white art. You don't have to use color. You can use it in your cover if you want. You don't have to have it on your cover, but make sure your black and white art is good, the best you can get your hands on. If you need to, use public domain images because there's lots of stuff out there that can be used that that can help make your product look more professional. So I made this video to talk about some of the things I think need to be on games or shouldn't be in games, but also because I want your input, what you want to see in a game. For example, I'm not a big fan of narrative systems. I don't even consider them role-playing games. They're games. I won't argue about that anymore, but I don't think that they're role-playing games. Role-playing games happen at the table level between characters. Narrative games happen at the person level, the people sitting around the table between the people. Those are different things. Those are different things. And One is a role-playing game because it takes place with the interaction between uh, characters, while a narrative game is something that takes place between people. It's a form of acting. It is not a form of role-playing, in my opinion. They're different things. So I don't like narrative games. There are people who love them. There are people who only play them. There are people who don't have a problem, for example, with playing within a fate system, which is so esoteric. I have never been able to wrap my skull around it, and I've never fathomed how it evolved out of fudge. Never got that. Um, there are people who like lots of crunch, and people like a little bit of crunch. For example, there are things I love about Pathfinder. There are things I don't love about Pathfinder, and like Pathfinder has so many options, and that is both a blessing and a curse. And there are times I'm thinking, it'd be really great if we could pare down Pathfinder and make it this, use the engine and make it the simpler selections, and then I could never figure out which selections I want to add. Because if I'm doing this, it needs a whole new different set of selections than if I want to do that. And do I want to have to create a new game for every single different thing you want to do? And the answer is no, I don't. So we were kind of stuck with a system that has too many options, but those options mean you can do so much with it. So yeah, it's a mixed blessing, or it's a curse. Depends how you want to look at it. So these are the kind of things I'm talking about here. What do you want to see in a game? And what do you not want to see in a game? For example, pretentious opening statements that make you sound like you're godlike, speaking from on high, and that you're using examples from your own life in some bizarre, twisted way of showing that you have the bona fides and the gravitas to actually be the person making the game. Yeah, I'm talking about Haven. A narrative structure that, again, sounds so pretentious because it actually involves talking sticks. Yes, I'm discussing Microscope. These are things that baffled me, and I can't believe they ever saw print, and I marvel that people are really really fans of these two particular products. But I guess there are. So game on. Not for me. I don't understand why people want to play an older system that I think that there are better versions of it today. And I remember that that's just not my taste. At the same time, I am a hypocrite in this regard, is that I prefer the 4th edition of Gamma World, 1992 edition, not the 4th edition that was designed for 4th edition D&D, but the 4th edition that was the 4th edition of Gamma World for 1992. Yes, that's a little more complex than it needs to be. So these are all things that I think that we need to talk about. You get right down to the basics too. Do you like a percentile system? Do you prefer a D20 system, as in the sense of which dice you use, not necessarily which, the D20 system as we know it for D&D and Pathfinder, but just do you like D6s instead? Do you like dice pools? I'm not a big fan of dice pool if they have more than like 5 dice. You want to have something that only uses 5 dice? Okay, I might be able to deal with it. More than 5 dice, and I think it's too many dice to deal with. I just think you're asking for too much. And this is completely personal because I can't count more than 5 objects at a glance. You throw 5 objects on a table, and I can count 5 objects just by looking at them. More than 5 objects, I have to stop and I have to count. And that slows me down, and that makes it feel awkward for me. It doesn't matter what it is, any kind of 5 objects. You put a bunch of something objects on a table, I can scoop 5 objects up quickly because I can visually I know what 5 is. Anything more than 5, and I can't. I'm sure that people have different parameters for that. Some people may be comfortable with 10 or 15 dice. I'm not one of those people. So I'm not a big dice pool fan. I do like, for example, the D12 system from 1,000 Suns because it was able to do 2 things at once, both resolving both your actual skill attempt and your skill result in that one roll. That was an elegant little mechanic. I thought that was quite well done. Even if the 1,000 Sun setting itself doesn't necessarily fit some of the genres ideas I have for science fiction. Do you like a generic system? Do you want a system that can be applied to science fiction, to pulp action, to fantasy, to police procedurals, to Cthulhu? Or do you think every single genre deserves its own type of game? And how should they differ? So we're talking about how to design the ideal game for whatever it is that we think that an ideal game is. I'm putting this up there as an idea generator for Jan, and for the rest of us, because maybe we can also come up with ideas that we could apply to games that we love, or some of us may even get around or someday writing our own. I've dabbled with the idea. I've never done anything with it. Maybe I will someday. Who knows? Maybe I could actually create a simple system that's actually simple.